Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Justin the Food Entrepreneurs Podcast. I'm Justin Bizzarro. I'm your host, and today I have with me my beautiful and loving significant other and co-host, Deborah Michas.
Hello.
And today we'll be interviewing Regina Hild of Reginas Farm Kitchen in Atlanta, Georgia. How are you doing today, Regina?
I'm doing terrific. Thank you. How are you guys?
We're doing very well. We recorded quite a bit of podcasts today to get out there, so we're well warmed up for you. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing in your business and the products that you sell.
So we are a small batch artisan fruit spreads. We started off with making our products in our Dunwoody kitchen and just, watching the business grow and talking to lots of people and selling direct to people. We then discovered that in order to grow the business, we had to go to a co-packer. So our business is built basically I was born and raised on a farm in Iowa, and I've always had a love and appreciation of food.
Okay.
From being small all the way up to being a grown-up. It's always been in my heart.
And did you do lots of cooking with your family? I mean, growing up on a farm, and a lot of people I've talked to who grew up on farms, they eat, basically off the land and eat very fresh and whatnot. And so, a lot of the family recipes are a lot of how these food entrepreneurs start their companies. And so did you have a lot of that as a kid growing up in your household?
We did. As a matter of fact, there were 7 people in our farm. There were 7 people in our family, and so there was always lots of mouths to feed. My dad farmed the 200 acres by himself, and my mom took care of us kids. And from a very early age, I can remember going to the garden, planting in April, like planting potatoes, Good Friday with my dad. And then, my mom had strawberry patches around the farm. She loved growing strawberries, and she was a bit of an entrepreneur herself. So we always picked strawberries and sold them by the roadside. And whatever we had left over, we always made jam and put it in the freezer for the winter months. That's where I got my love of food. And I always joke around with my friends that I was eating organic before it was a cool thing to do.
Before it was a thing, yeah. Okay, wait, so you just said your mom was somewhat of an entrepreneur too. And so was that her selling the fruits and vegetables on the roadside, or is that what you're referencing, or was there something else?
Yeah, my mom, she kind of instilled into us, being sustainable and having, knowing where your food's from. And so we had ducks, turkeys, chickens. We had all the farm animals you could have. And I learned a lot from my mom. I learned how to fry chicken in a black iron skillet. I learned how to butcher a chicken from my mom as well. That was one of those not so pleasant things that as kids, yes, right. We all did that during the summer times. But my mom was a business lady. If she was not selling strawberries, she loved to get out and make money somehow. She was a brave lady. That's kind of like where we learned all of our skills as being independent and self-sufficient, as little farm kids could be.
Right. No, that's really cool to hear that, And so, here you grew up on a farm. And so was your dad entrepreneurial too? Because as much as he's running a farm, he then has to sell the products. And so who was his end user?
So my dad, he was born on the farm. He worked with his dad when he was young. So the farm is actually a centurion farm. It's been in our family for 100 years.
Wow.
Not always easy to do. And that's probably why my parents really instilled hard work in us. And we all had little jobs to do. My dad actually sold feed corn. And feed corn, the best way I can describe that is he used to sell corn for a company called McCurdy Feed Company. And he would have test plots of corn out in the fields, and he would put the flags out and show everybody what hybrids he was growing on what rows. So the farming part, my dad did do large farming with corn and soybeans, but then he also had this small business on the other side too. And then of course he had the garden. We gardened. That was like a smaller scale, but to me, my dad, whatever he had left over, my dad would go in, and they actually sold it at a small farmer's market in Toledo, Iowa. It was something that he liked, like his hobby turned into like his side business.
Okay, so both your mom and dad have this entrepreneurial spirit. They, have all this dimension to their life, your mom being the mother of 7 children, all these different things. So at what point were you like, this is the path for me and I really want to get into being an entrepreneur for myself? How did you get there?
How did I get there? It wasn't automatic. It really wasn't. I mean, going to college and getting a degree, I thought that's what I need. I need something more than just the skills that I have, hard work in my background. My parents did not go to college. Like they graduated 8th grade and then they stopped and then they worked. Like they worked and lived off the land. I saw the struggles that my parents made. I thank God that they taught us, because I think that's sort of what's missing out there right now, if you look at it. Like, we never had a lot of things growing up that most kids have now.
Right.
So you always need a plan B and a plan C. And that's why I said, I'm going to go to college, and from college, let me go work for somebody. And, I did that. And then I discovered that I like to color outside of the lines. I like to make up my own rules.
Right.
And food for me, I always knew everybody needs to eat. Food is great. Like the memories I have from growing up on a farm will always be with me.
That's awesome. I love that. And, really, you can hear your passion for your upbringing and your family, and to be able to attribute you going into this industry because, of the fond memories you have of all of that. That's awesome. And mm-hmm. So at some point you get there and you're like, I'm going to start my own business. And so you had mentioned you learned how to cook and stuff from your mom, but, what, did you have other training?
As a matter of fact, I did. So, in between the corporate jobs and moving a little bit, I always knew that probably a degree would be helpful. So, in 2010, after I did all the corporate jobs and I worked for lots of people, I decided, it's time that I need to do what I'm passionate about. And that's when I went and got my culinary degree in 2010. And for 2 years solid, I worked in the field, not meaning worked in the field, but I actually worked in some commercial kitchens around Atlanta.
Really?
And I worked I worked at the Hilton Hotel in downtown Atlanta. The chefs were excellent. Like, they gave me my first opportunity to work in a commercial kitchen while I was attending school.
Wow.
That was enjoyable, but it also taught me the skills that you need. The skills that you need along with what in a kitchen, they were all important.
And so when
so
you
having
were in
that
the
degree
kitchen,
helped.
were you like, I mean, were you actually cooking? Were you helping figure out the buying? Were you helping create recipes? I mean, how far encompassing was your role?
So at the Hilton, it was mostly plating up. It was in the pastry shop, in the kitchen. And I was sort of like an apprentice to the pastry chefs that were in there.
Right.
We would plate up like 2,000 pieces of cheesecake and put a raspberry sauce on the cheesecake and then send it off.
Right.
So it was a lot of hands-on doing. It was baking cookies, making croissants. That was a large convention sort of hotel setting, so the business was sort of seasonal,
right,
but it worked with my school schedule.
Well, so that was nice. So, I mean, was that part of your education where they had you go do something like that, or you just wanted to compound your education with actual hands-on learning? I
actually kind of, my younger sister is a master pastry chef, Lorraine. She's out in Omaha. And Lorraine always told me, work in the business. Before you jump in and go to school, work in the business at the same time.
Right.
And get as much experience as you can while you're in school. School will require it, but you just have a leg up if you can get yourself out there and get working in the industry. Yeah. And that's kind of like what I did.
That sounds like good advice, before you kind of dive in too deep. So you got your degree after going to culinary school, and then what did you do? Did you go straight into owning your own business, or how did you make the decision? Because that's a big one, to go from you have this training, you can obviously go a million different directions with that. So how did you pick your product line and that you wanted to start that?
Well, so it was my last year in school. There was a small local bakery here in Dunwoody that was opening. And I applied, I got the job, and it was just like a short 10 minutes from our house. So that position was something that just kind of popped up, and I felt like the more I learned, the better I would be. I got the corporate side at Hilton. Let me get a startup under me too. So that's where I started up, and I worked with this owner here in Dunwoody. The bakery's no longer in business, but it was an organic gluten-free bakery. Mm-hmm. And one of my positions at this bakery was that I would go into the kitchen and recreate products, and our products were 100% gluten-free and organic. They eventually got into Whole Foods, and then I got real good because my position there at the bakery entailed me wearing lots of hats.
So when you say you recreated recipes, do you mean to try and to turn it into a gluten-free product? So you would have to figure out we're going to use almond flour and to have the same consistency, I'm going to do whatever. Is that what you're referencing?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's exactly what it is. Our products got picked up by Whole Foods, and that's where I got the indication, wow. So this can go into Whole Foods, this is basically another branch of business that I enjoyed working with. I loved the creative part of it, working flavors and recipes and turning things into something different and making something that the customer actually wants and they're looking for. It was a lot of fun.
I'm sure. It sounds like fun. And baking's an interesting one. I definitely I think cooking and baking are dramatically different. It's almost like baking is a little bit more of a science because you're always looking for things to rise and whatnot, whereas it's not just the flavor profile, but it's also the chemistry of, getting it all to perform the way you need it to. It's much more exact, I think. So, And so then, so you were doing that. You saw that your products that you were able to recreate were, successful enough that they wanted them in big chains like a Whole Foods or whatnot. And so after you had done that, how did you decide that you were going to do it for yourself, not just someone else?
Well, one of those things that, don't get too comfortable with what's going on in your life, because then, you never know what's going to come up around the corner. So that ended up not turning out so well.
Right.
Parted ways with that small business. That was challenging time, but in the end, I left. And so how did I end up making my own product? And that's kind of a fun story. We still have really good friends that live up in North Carolina, and he dabbles in the garden. And this friend of mine always has a large garden, and he thought he was growing green bell peppers. Well, these green bell peppers turned into jalapeno peppers.
Yeah.
And the part of me, this is the part that I love to share, because by accident, the crafting and the bottling of our preserves kind of happened by accident. I'm
a little bit laughing at that, just because I'm like, I cannot imagine anything happening in my life where I would accidentally end up making your scenario, so it's like, it's funny because it's also a myriad of your entire background of growing up on a farm, knowing how to cook, knowing all these different things that made it so it was even possible for that to happen. But it's kind of funny to say you accidentally had it happen, but it sometimes makes me think that when we think things are accident, maybe there's a little design in there, that it's like your whole life's path led you, of all people, to be in this situation, to be able to do this.
And I got to tell you, the first product that we made from Regina's Farm Kitchen, we started this product, and it's called it's strawberry blueberry jalapeno jam.
Yeah.
And we actually won an award with that jam. We won in 2018. We were invited to go out to the Good Food Awards out in San Francisco.
Wow.
And one of our preserve was in the top 15 selected by the judges. And that was very exciting for us. So, having my parents were Depression era parents, and they would never throw anything away or throw anything out. And being a chef, I decided, I don't want to throw these jalapeno peppers away. I could turn this into something really delicious. And that's where the preserve came in. I started playing around with them in the kitchen and making this, and I kept making it and kept getting it better and better and fine-tuning the formula. And then I would take it to parties, and I would give it out as gifts, and then people were like, you should make this, you should sell this. And that's kind of like it happened.
Right. Okay, wait, so how early on did you win that award from the inception of your company? Like, was that relatively, like, you had started making this product not just for your own self and for your friends, but actually started producing it? And then how quickly after that did you win this award?
Well, we incorporated, I incorporated somewhere around 2016, and I started the product. I started giving it away and making it for friends at Christmas time and birthdays and such and parties. And then we won the award. We found out, so July 2017, I was talked into putting it into the contest. One of my good friends who makes caramel sauce down in Sarasota, Florida, she encouraged me. Her name is Christine, and she encouraged me to apply and put my preserves into the contest. And from July to October of 2017, I sort of had that feeling that we were going to get it because they kept after me and they kept coming back. Like the officials and the judges kept asking more and more questions. And so we knew like November that we'd won. And then in January of 2018, we went out to California to get the award.
Wow. And so, I mean, I've heard from people who have won in their category at the Flavor of Georgia or whatnot, and they were just kind of like, they mentioned that it was early on in the starting of their company, and they weren't really prepared for the attention it would bring to them. And so did you experience something similar to that? You know, how, like, were you getting all sorts of attention and people reaching out to you or wanting it, or did you have to figure out additional production? I mean, what came with all of that?
So, I mean, it does happen. What came of that was, you know, it's the perfect storm. Here somebody wants something that you make, but can you keep up? Can you make this? At some point, you have to decide, you either go to a commercial kitchen and start producing it on your own and see how that goes. And if it doesn't, it can go left or right, but whatever happens, if people start buying it, they want it.
Right.
So that's when we decided, okay, we're going to do this. We have to do this right. So I went to the University of Georgia, and I went to see a couple folks out there. They do starting a food business in Georgia. It's a 2-day course.
Yeah.
At UGA in Athens. So I attended that, and I decided, let's do it.
And this is following winning. Is that correct? So I've got the sequence.
Yeah.
So you win this thing, and you already actually have a company, but now you're like, I'm going to take a class on starting a company.
Yeah.
You're like, so you're just having to, like, you know, drink out of a fire hose. Like, oh my God, how am I going to get this all done? Crash course, 2-day course. Here you go. And
it's very overwhelming.
Yeah. So you're taking the course, and did it give you the tools that you needed?
Yeah. I mean, at the first day, you're all excited, you're pumped up, but you know, they're asking you some pretty tough questions. You know, do you have what it takes to be a food entrepreneur? You know, are you really an entrepreneur? These are some questions that they threw out at us.
Right.
You know, can you take rejection? Do you have enough money? Who's going to do this? Do you have marketing money? You know, do you have a business plan? Are you incorporated? I mean, on and on and on. So,
yeah.
So
were you quickly like sweating bullets, like, uh-oh? Or were you like, yeah, I can do this? Was it giving you confidence with the additional questions, or was it making you nervous, or both?
It's both. It really, yeah. And that's where you have people in your back pocket who help push you through and kind of coach you, and you surround yourself with the positive people that have done this, or you reach out and ask for help. But if you were not to do this, you would be very disappointed. And I'm kind of like that person. I'm like, come on, let's give it the old college try. Let's do this.
Right.
Somebody else is if you don't. So, you know, how fast can you run to the finish line? You have to just have confidence in yourself to keep going and not overthink it. If you overthink it, you're going to go back 50 steps. You have to just keep plugging away every day.
Right. You know, it's interesting. I've said before on the show that if someone were to give you a script and tell you what you had to do, you'd be like, wow, that's a little overwhelming. I don't know that I can do that, you know, but you, as an entrepreneur, you just kind of are always pivoting and figuring it out as you go. But it sounds like a little bit in attending that class, they gave you the script. You know, they're a little bit like, hey, this is what you're going to have to do. And that's, you know, where I can see how you could maybe start sweating some bullets, being like, wow, you know, because it's not just one thing at a time, which is really kind of all anyone can do is one thing at a time. But it's instead showing you what it all looks like. And so you persevered, you took the class. And so did you go straight into production for yourself, knowing that you had won this, or did you reach out? I mean, how did you figure out your next steps?
The next step was very scary. I mean, all of a sudden you're on the roadmap, and then everybody wants to talk to you. Where can I buy this stuff? Do you have a storefront? I mean, all the questions, and you've got that chance to like say the right thing so you don't turn them off, or you say the right thing that intrigues them about you. And I decided to go to a small kitchen, and I rented a kitchen probably for 3 months. And it wasn't the best scenario. It's one of those things, you wrote the check, and then 3 months later, I'm like, oh crap, this is not going to work out, because the kitchen is next to it's next to a bar, and your hours are 10 o'clock at night until 6 a.m. And is it safe for you to go there by yourself? Oh yeah. I mean, I had several conversations with my husband. He was like, I don't think you should go there. We need to talk about this. I'm going with you, those kind of things.
Right.
And, like I said, you write the check, you got to see it through. And so once the 3 months was up, I was like, you know what? I need to rethink this. Which direction do I want to go into? So at that point, I began speaking to other places that have prep kitchens around town that I could go into. And I just began doing my own research. And initially, it's signing a lease. It's deciding, do you want to do that, or do you want to turn this over to somebody else to help you with? And in the end, I went to a co-packer in Decatur, and she helped get the product in the jars for me. I source all the fruits. I source all of my ingredients, all the packaging. I source all of that, and I make sure that it's ready for her, and she prepares it for me in her FDA-approved commercial kitchen, and she's licensed, and it's been a great relationship.
And I saw on your website that it says small batch. And so I wanted to ask you about that, because, I mean, I know we run commercial kitchens. So, small batch is always a tricky thing, because with more, that means more turns, right, to produce the product. And if you're putting it in a, smaller container versus a bigger one. And so, but I'm hearing also that there's is it a consistency, and that's why you like small batch, or what is the benefit of the small batch?
Yes, because at some point it's food science.
Mm-hmm.
When you start scaling up your recipes, it's food science, and things don't always work together.
Right.
And it could be a big flop at the end. So that's why we do small batch. There's a point where your capacity is not any more than, 10, 20 cases at a time.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know that much about, I've only made jelly a couple times from crab apples that grew on a tree, but near my at my house. But so are there natural pectins, or, what do you have to do when you're making this? I mean, I know you're now having someone else do it, but maybe you could go a little bit into jelly making for, just because it's interesting for someone who's never made it. What goes into that? Because I believe that the crab apples had their own natural pectin, and so it was able to turn into a jelly. I don't even really know how it works, but that's probably the food science part of it. But maybe you could share a little bit about that with the audience.
So, fruits out there, your fruits all have different natural pectin inside of the product. Like a peach has different natural pectin than, say, a strawberry,
right,
or a blackberry. And in order to make jam set or kind of gel, there are products that you can mix in with it, that allow the product to gel and have a consistency. And that's where if you can't achieve that, then there are other like natural products on the market that you can mix in with your fruit, so they'll set up nicely. And if the fruit is green, there is pectin there. Like Granny Smith apples have a ton of pectin in the green peel.
Right.
But say a peach has a different pectin level. Like peaches have to be ripe, they have to be juicy in order to form a natural pectin. And apples are equally as different. You mentioned jelly. Jellies are made with fruit juice. And that's something we don't make jellies. We actually we like to be called fruit spreads, or we like to be called preserves.
And is that because there's actual pieces of fruit in it?
Yes, because there's fruit suspended in them. And also the sugar content. That's why we went to the University of Georgia to have the food scientists help us. There are levels of sugar and fruit in each jar, and they have to have a particular number. Because if they don't set, they can spoil and they won't be good in the jar. And it's all based upon the water, the sugar, and the fruit.
And so do you have to add sugars? Because I know a lot of fruit isn't like I shouldn't say super sweet, but as sweet as you would imagine in a preserve or in a jelly that you would have.
Yes, that is very true. Like raspberries tend to be a little sour. So we do add sugar to our fruit spreads, and because all fruits have a different sugar and a sweetness they're all different. Especially like our strawberry, blueberry, jalapeno, we've got the sweet with the sweetness of the strawberry, the blueberry, and then at the end you get, the hit of the jalapeno, the zesty spiciness.
Right.
And to balance that off, we put sugar in it, and it's a great engagement of all flavors. And that's what you want to achieve when you're making these.
And so, like, I know that, from eating just like strawberries out of a little container, you can have one that's super, super sweet, and you can have one that's more tart. And so when you're making it, I'm trying to imagine having a recipe where your product is not consistent. And so how do you, can you just always say, I need a cup of sugar, or do you have to also have tasting so that from batch to batch you have consistency, or from different parts of the year when they're picking the fruit? To get that consistent, whether heat or sweetness, how do you do that?
It's tasting. You definitely need to taste while you're making your batch, and you go by the flavor. You go by the mouthfeel, or if it's too tart. The strawberries to me are the very best. The first beginning part of the season, as I do think that, and the peaches to me also, the peaches I think get better and they're sweeter kind of mid-season.
Right.
But you try to get the fruit at the best time that it's ripe and it's ready to go. And as far as the sugars go, we don't adjust the sugar from batch to batch. We really rely on the fruit, and for most of the time it's right there. It's just like wine. I know if you're drinking wine can be different from year to year. It's not an exact science every year, and that's where you're going to get a little different in your grape.
Right.
And
what about in terms of the jalapenos? Because I know going to the grocery store, I can have one that's light your mouth on fire, and I can have another one that's like a green pepper. And so how about the consistency of the heat of the jalapeno?
They're different. They are.
So
very
how do you
different.
keep that heat consistent from batch to batch or year to year?
There again, the peppers can be different. Sometimes we'll pull some of the seeds out, but we like to use the membrane as well as the seeds in this one jam because it helps bring the spice level up. But you can also adjust that by taking out some of the membrane or the seeds.
Right. I want to, and since we're talking about that, I mean, just my own experience of playing with jalapenos when I'm cooking and stuff, it seems like when you're cutting that out over the sink, that sometimes it can really even make you cough because it's so spicy. But then if you pull it out, the actual, meat part of the jalapeno isn't necessarily so spicy. So is that a trick that you can just keep that in there if you want to keep more heat?
Yes, the membrane. So when you're cleaning out a jalapeno, if you scrape all the seeds and the white pith out of it, it brings the heat down. The heat, it won't be as hot. And also, if you're baking jalapenos or you're roasting them, the longer you bake or roast them, the more mild they get.
That's interesting. I did not know that.
I didn't either. Although it does, I mean, I guess it follow. I'm reflecting back on my working with them in my own kitchen, and that I guess that makes sense. I just never pulled that all together.
Yeah, and of course the capsaicin level is different in habaneros and jalapenos. We use habaneros in our peach habanero jam, and we just went out and visited some friends out in Phoenix, and I took a case of that with me. And this friend eats it every day on toast in the morning.
It sounds delicious. I can imagine making that a habit. So maybe you could tell us about what some of your products are and share with the audience.
Absolutely. So right now we have 6 flavors. Strawberry, blueberry, jalapeno, our first. Then we have another one that we make with blueberries from South Georgia. It's a blueberry lemon jam. And then I made a triple berry. We have triple berry. It's made with Granny Smith apples and Georgia honey.
Oh, that sounds delicious.
And yeah, we don't add sugar to that one per se. We only put the honey in. Mm-hmm. So that jam is the lowest in carbs, and also it's the lowest in sugar, and it's a bit tart, and it's a little loose than the other one.
Right.
So then we also have, the next ones I have peach Madagascar vanilla bean.
Yum. I love your flavors are so unique. They're not, like the typical strawberry and grape.
No, yeah. So the other one, we love sweet and spicy. So the peach habanero, it's gorgeous in the jar, and it can be enjoyed on a savory dish or even, just for breakfast.
Your packaging is gorgeous. I mean, I was looking at it online, and I mean, they just look delicious because with the clear bottle, or it's a glass bottle. They are gorgeous. So well done.
Thank you. We're really excited because Georgia is now, they have been growing citrus here for several years. We have a new relationship with a new farmer down in Statesboro, Georgia. It's called Franklin Farms, and they grow Satsumas. And Satsumas are sort of the mandarin orange family. We're so excited because we got to play around with some Satsumas from the farm this year, and so now we make an orange Satsuma Meyer lemon marmalade. And it's got rinds in it, and it's beautiful, and it's tart, and it's fun.
I have to tell you that I've only recently discovered Satsuma oranges, well, because they have started growing it in Georgia, and we were down in Pierce County and sampled a few, and now I can't eat any other orange.
Anytime we've stumbled upon them, Justin is like, I mean, literally, they're, where were we? And they were $6 a pound. He's like, I don't care.
Yeah, we were in the Virgin Islands for a while, and they had Satsuma oranges, and they were, $6 a pound there. And they're easy to peel. They're easy to manage with. To me, they have the perfect sugar levels. I don't know. It's hard to ever go back to another orange. They just don't taste the same to me. Or, I think there's a huge thing there. And I'm going to go off on a tangent for a second. And I'm so glad you're making, preserves out of it, because I'm like, someone needs to do more with these fruits, especially because Georgia's now growing so many of them and people are planting them. Like Satsuma orange juice and, varieties within food or making sauces or barbecue sauces or whatever it is. And the excitement that I just heard, Deborah's like, oh my God, there's someone else actually likes this. I know, as soon as you
brought it up, I'm like, oh, here we go.
Here we go. Because it's changed my life. It's weird that food would do that, but it literally is the best orange, or for me, citrus, that I've ever had. And for me to say that, and I've been in food my whole life, whether it was my family or myself, to have some product that actually comes along and blows me away in that way, I think is phenomenal. Then
we're going to have to get you a couple jars of this.
Yes, absolutely. Well, and the other thing I wanted to say is my other recent discovery, because I didn't even know pepper jelly was a thing until the last 3 years we've been spending so much time in Georgia. So I'm like, okay, pepper jelly. Well, recently I've discovered that pepper jelly, or any pepper type of jam or preserve, is amazing with peanut butter on bread. And normally I'm like a straight peanut butter on toast type person. I'm like, jelly, I just want the peanut butter delivered straight in. And I eat peanut butter by the scoops. But once the flavor profile and change of just a peanut butter sandwich, because of preserves like you're doing and the jams and jellies that are going on in other parts of Georgia, I think, the audience, there's a great thing going on down there in Georgia and what you guys are doing. So one, I'm very excited to try your products in various different ways. And the Satsuma orange one, I know we went off on a tangent as you were talking about your flavors, but that really excites me, because I know that I love when people buy their agricultural products locally to make their products that then can be shipped all over the United States or even the globe, because supporting that local ecosystem and economic system is so important. So wow, I'm like, the smile is like ear to ear right now over the oranges. So, but anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt in the middle of you telling your flavors. So I do have another question, but I'll wait until you get through talking about all your flavors.
So those are the 6 flavors that we offer right now. We do want to bring out 2 more this year.
And what are those?
I really want to go with something like, we're considering something with strawberries.
Oh, so you're like in the kitchen trying to figure out new flavors. You just want to expand your line, but right now you're playing with different ideas?
Yeah, we're playing with some different ideas, but we want to expand with something that is a strawberry one. Whether we partner it up with something else, another fruit, or a pepper, we're looking at that. So we're doing some taste testing. And the other one is fig. Fig is so underdeveloped. I mean, there's figs are amazing. So I would like to get my hands on some figs. And, Georgia they're really not known for figs here in the state, but I'm sure we can find a small farmer for those. Those are 2 flavors I want to play with this year.
Regina, will you also tell the audience a little bit, like there's so many different uses for this type of product other than just eating it on toast. So will you kind of share some of the different uses?
Yes. I mean, there's 100 ways. I mean, I don't know how much time we have, but we like to use one of our products, the strawberry blueberry jalapeno. We like to go and make wings, hot wings with that. We use it as a glaze. We enjoy pairing it with puff pastry and brie. We like doing a pulled pork. Like I made pulled pork peach habanero sliders.
Oh my God.
Those were fabulous.
They sound amazing.
There. Yeah. We even make cocktails. We did a blue Martini is what we called it. It's a cosmopolitan made with local vodka from one of the distilleries here in Atlanta. We actually used Old Fourth Distillery vodka. We take our blueberry lemon jam and we partner with a little bit of triple sec. And we shake it and we pour it into a martini glass. So
sounds
there
amazing.
Are creative ways.
You know, I used to have this guy work for me, and he worked as a bartender in a previous job, and he used to make dessert martinis, and it was so creative. He would take the glass, you know how like on a margarita they put salt on it, but he would do like shavings, like he would use chocolate syrup, he'd dip it, and then he would like put coconut shavings on it, or, you know, he had all these different ways of whether it was sugar on the rim or, chocolate shavings or whatnot. He did all these different things and then put a martini like what you're describing in there. It just sounds amazing. Plus a great presentation.
Yes, it is. So, I mean, yes, you can put it on a scone. You can do jam on a toast. But I think that it's fun to be savory, or you can do something sweet with these. They're very versatile.
Right.
And they make great gifts. But we do want to expand the line. That's one of our goals this year, is to expand the line and also to develop smaller jars. We sell our products in a 9-ounce, and we're looking at doing something half the size, like a 4-ounce, 3-ounce jar, something around there.
And just so the audience knows, Regina, could you tell us all 6 of those flavors that you guys have available again, just so we make sure everyone can hear it? Because I know we're drooling over here in our studio, and I want to make sure the audience hears all 6 flavors again.
Absolutely. All right. So from the top, we do strawberry blueberry jalapeno, peach vanilla bean, peach habanero, blueberry lemon. We do triple berry that's made with honey and apples. And then lastly, we do an orange Meyer lemon marmalade. And we use Satsumas from Georgia, from South Georgia.
And then do you want to just give everyone also like where they can find these? One, what is your different handles, and 2, if it can be found in certain stores?
Yes. So right now we have online presence, and that's reginasfarmkitchen.com. We are also at local farmers markets. We're at Brookhaven Farmers Market, the Alpharetta Farmers Market, and Dunwoody. Those are the 3 markets that we're at on Saturdays. And I would just tell everyone they can always go to our website and look at the events and locations where to find us. We are very excited. We have some retail and wholesale business going, and we have some restaurants that we're in as well. So we're mainly just here in the Atlanta metro area, and we're expanding, but it's just me right now, so it takes time.
So tell us a little bit about that. You're now doing most of this yourself, as you said, and at what point do you feel that you're going to add 2 new flavors? So we talked about that, or products, but how do you envision your growth going forward? And at what point do you sort of have to bring on more people, and how are you going to go about it? Do you have an idea of what that future holds?
So right now, you're correct. Being a small business owner, there's always capital and resources and employees to think about. For me, I've been the one that's been present at the farmers markets on the weekends. Last year, I brought on 3 part-time people to help at the farmers market. So it's just a Saturday position that they would work. Then what I would like to do more of this year is getting more strategic and having someone to assist in like the social media. I handle the distribution right now, and that kind of determines how, like, if you don't have stores, then who handles your distribution. So it's like, what came first, the chicken or the egg? And it's like you almost have to have 30. I was told you have to have 30 retail partners before some distributors will even consider you. And
that's a lot.
That's sort of like, it's a lot. It's a lot. And so that's what we're looking at. If it doesn't happen this year, then next year, definitely. But it's one of those growing pains of being a small business. We're definitely not the big old guy up in Michigan or, the other person on the West Coast. We're small, and sometimes small is okay. I still sleep at night. We'll just say it that way.
The distribution thing, I think, is interesting. And Regina, as we see more of it, and I normally don't talk about our side of the business much on the podcast, but what we're seeing actually is there's quite a bit of entrepreneurs that are coming out, particularly in the Georgia area, that are actually trying to debunk that system and create more of an Uber-style model, for lack of a better term, of doing distribution for customers, where it's sort of grouping small entrepreneurs in the food and beverage space together and sort of picking up their products and delivering them as they need them versus the traditional model. And as we learn more about that and see that grow, I will actually pass on some names to you that may help out, and then you don't need to do your own distribution as much or wait to that 30 retailer position, threshold, because I myself think that there's this weird gray area in food and beverages that everyone runs into. You start your business, things are going well, but then you have to make this gigantic leap to the next part of growth in your business. And unless you do super amount of online sales, it's hard to get the capital to do that leap. But it's also, even if you do get the online sales, it doesn't help you with that leap because it's not like it's bringing in the additional retailers. And even to get those additional retailers, you got to spend money on sales and on the road and time. And it's a very hard part of the business. And so I think there's people out there that are recognizing it's an issue and they're trying to disrupt that a little bit. So as over the next few weeks, as we get a better idea what those look like, I will make sure that we make a note here and let you know. And as I get on other podcasts or do a Motivational Monday, I can let the audience know. But your hardship in that growth or trying to figure that out in the distribution model is definitely one of the big things, as well as how much money distribution companies want to just distribute your food when you're the one procuring it, selling it, securing it, finding the customers, and then they make more money than you do. So I think there's a lot of people out there that are seeing that that's a problem also in their models and trying to disrupt all of that. So I wanted to touch upon it just because you mentioned in outside of the podcast as well as on the podcast, we have a lot of people that, have come to us or spoken on the podcast that have that same issue. So I hope that the entrepreneurs who are in the food and beverage distribution space are listening in, because the model does need to be better. And there are so many companies that are like Regina's company out there that need someone to fill that gray area, from being, big, where's the medium space and who's filling it. And so I just wanted to touch upon that. But I had another question for you. And I know we talked about it a little bit, but just out of my own curiosity, because I don't, we don't produce things like this. We co-package them, but I guess I don't fully understand. And now that we've talked about it, what is the difference between jams, jellies, preserves? I know you mentioned fruit juice, but what exactly is the difference between the three of them? I mean, they all three have different names, so what makes them different?
All right. So the FDA, they're the ones that set and tell everyone who produces what you can call your product. And it's based upon they put strict guidelines on the sugar that you put in your jam and to make it a governing shelf life. So when I started this process, I knew what my sugar levels were at in every jam. And that's the part where you want to call yourself a jam, but because you are less than the governing FDA sugar required, they don't want you to be called jam. So we're sort of calling ourselves like Artisan fruit spreads. Okay. But so preserves are, I'll tell you this way, preserves are when you have whole pieces of fruit suspended in the mixture. And fruits, they can be all fruits, okay, whatever fruits you decide to put in there. The next thing is the jellies. The jellies have more, we don't produce jelly, but jelly by definition has no pieces of fruit in it. And it's gelled fruit juice with added sugar, lemon juice, and usually some pectin. Marmalades are a combination of 1 or 3 different kinds of citrus, and they are made with chopped, pureed, or sliced citrus. It's usually cooked with some sugar, lemon juice, and pectin. Our marmalades have a lot of citrus peel in the jar, and I think that gives the character of the chef or the manufacturer who makes it. Everybody's different, but we like to put citrus in ours. We like you to know that there's a citrus peel in it, and when those are cooked down with the sugar and the lemon juice and the pectin, it's a real nice marriage of everything that you'd want on your toast or something served with cheese. So those are the 3 types. Hopefully that describes what you were thinking.
No,
what they are.
That was perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And so that being said, what is your most popular flavor that you offer or you see people are most attracted to?
Right now, they like the spice. And because we just, from being in the business for just a few years now, they all go back to that strawberry blueberry jalapeno. That's been our number 1 seller. And folks that don't really like big spice, peppers and all, they go to the blueberry, lemon, and the triple berry. And peach vanilla bean has been very popular for us being here in the South and in Georgia. And I get asked all the time, will you do a fig preserve, or have you considered making strawberry rhubarb or just straight blackberry? So from this business, all you will find out, and in any business, you can't just make it for you, because you are trying to please your customers. So you need to produce what your customers are asking for, whether you like it or not.
Do you have any interest in expanding outside of the jams and marmalades? And do you have any ideas of other items you'd like to add to your product line?
Well,
other than just different flavors?
I also like to dabble in the kitchen with, like I said, baking has always been like one of my loves. I do love baking because to me it's therapeutic. But
and baking could really go hand in hand with the products you already have, right? Because you can just blend them in.
Yeah. Right now, I don't have any other plans to grow, into any other sauces or anything. We're probably going to just nail down what we have and try to bring in some more flavors and grow the business that direction. Perhaps in a year or two, we'll do some ancillary other items to sell with it. Mm-hmm.
And so, if you could go back, Regina, and tell yourself something in 2016, 3 years ago when you started this business, and tell yourself some things you wish you knew then that you know now, what would they be?
I would tell myself to set bigger goals. Don't be afraid to set something that's too small that you're going to achieve. Set big goals, because I think that big things happen. I think when you write the goal down and just go for it. Try not to be afraid and try not to overthink it. Also, I would advise, the business plan, which has been very challenging for us, but that's really important to have a plan.
And
really research what you're doing.
Yeah, I can see that for sure. And even the plan, pivoting is somewhat hard, but the plan is definitely a thing to help you get started. And it's not easy. And what are the things that you love about doing right now with your business, and what are the things that you don't like doing?
Wow, that's a loaded question.
Well, as entrepreneurs, we have to do it all, right? So, it's individual to each person.
Probably the easiest thing for me is, I love the customer interaction. I like to be in front of the audience. It's fun to meet your customers. It's fun to delight them. What I don't really enjoy about this business is I guess the hardest thing for us is finding enough time and balance to get everything done. The hardest thing, I think, is the planning part. So I find myself just, sometimes you're at a roadblock. Okay, what are you going to do this week? And you just have to keep great notes and a plan and a planner in hand, and you just check off everything one thing at a time. That's probably the toughest part.
Yeah,
for us.
Understandable. And so, I'm kind of jumping around to all my questions here, but have you had any products or flavors that you created that haven't worked out and that you've stopped producing?
No. I'm going to tell
fortunate.
you, no, there's not that. And we've been very methodical. I've been really lucky because if I ask for help or an introduction to somebody, I've gotten it. And if it's not a competing company, for the most part, people want to help other entrepreneurs. But this company said that they went from like a 16-ounce jar to like a gallon-sized jar, and then they went down back to a 9-ounce jar, and they've been very helpful. So, you know, they want to share with you what mistakes they've made so you don't make them. And I've also been told that like 7 products is the key number that you want to have. Don't get over your head. Do 7 great products right now and get them under your belt before you decide about going on into anything else. And I feel like we're still in that chapter of this business.
And so when you guys are making, like you're about to make 2 new flavors, how do you decide? I mean, does it come down to you, or do you have certain people you bring into a room to help you make sure you're hitting a flavor profile that you think will be, delicious to a whole variety of people? How do you go through that process?
It's like going to the lab. It's going to your kitchen and going to your lab and playing around with the flavors, the recipes. It's key. I mean, everything from, the fruit to the sugar and to the flavor profiles, and then saving that batch and then bottling it up, labeling it, and then distributing it to like your A team. And it doesn't have to be a lot of people, but it's people that you trust that will tell you and be honest with you.
Right.
And then you go with it. Yeah. But having an honest group of people that don't have anything really to do with the business, but they want to see you succeed and also will be honest with you. That's how we'll do it. It's sort of like starting from scratch. And that's our motto, made from scratch by a farm-raised chef. So I always try to remember all that when I get into that mode of creating and crafting what we do.
That's great. You bring it back to your basics, right?
Yeah, I don't want to see this product. I mean, I by no means want to be in 50,000 stores across the United States. I think right now what's really neat and unique about this business is that there's a select group that can find this jam, that will pay the money to buy the jam, and the product is made based upon my values, how I was raised, and who I am, and it's good stuff. So that's, I think it's okay. It's okay to be small and start off small. And once you get your legs, you can get running to the next thing.
I think that's a lot of what people like about Artisan products is, there's no one who's a better salesperson than the person creating it. And, I love hearing how you like to get out there and you like to see your customer and bring them joy. And, I think it's a mutually beneficial relationship, because I think the person who purchases the Artisan products also loves hearing the story, and they like hearing the backgrounds of the people making it. And so it's a really symbiotic relationship, and it's fun to hear about and, see your family traditions or whatever go onto someone else's kitchen table. So it's a cool story for sure.
Thank you. I do have one thing to share. I'm kind of hearing that from several of my new retail partners that I'm working with, the boutiques, like the mom and pops.
Right.
They don't want something that's on a store shelf. And they want something that's unique. And you have to remember that those are the people that made you successful when you start the business. You don't want to burn bridges. You want to make them happy and keep them happy. And that's what I think is very unique about Artisan products. You have to be careful on how fast you grow and where you take the product. Because, you know, you're starting a brand new company if you don't do what you intended to do when you set out to do the business.
Right. I mean, only you can hold true to your mission, vision, values, and, you know, why you started it in the first place. And it's very easy to morph into something unintentionally. And so really kind of keeping your eye on the ball as to what you want your company to be. I think that's a great point.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I guess with that being said, is how do you stay inspired every day and motivated to keep moving forward with your business? Because I hear all the positive feedback and how you stay true to your vendors as well as your clients and the people that sell your product. But what motivates you to keep going and keep pursuing this dream?
What keeps me motivated, I would say really just the motivation in running the business. It's forever changing. And I remember this while I was in culinary school, and my chefs used to tell me, they said, you've entered the culinary world. And if you're not learning, you're not growing. And if you're not inspiring someone to try your food, then, you know, you're not growing. You're not who you set out to be. So I think you got to consistently delight your customer so they keep coming back. And if it were easy, everybody would be doing this. I mean, this is hard work. This is challenging. And you got to be that person that if someone's dangling a carrot in your front of your nose, you're going to go and keep striving to make that carrot better than somebody else. And I think there's plenty of business out there for everybody. It's just how hard do you want to work?
And I agree with that. I agree with that 100%. Mm-hmm. And the motivation thing is, for me, and just to take it a step further as entrepreneurs, I think that working for ourselves and determining our own destiny, and you touched upon it at the beginning of the podcast, is never being able to color inside the lines. And so as individuals that do that, it's very hard to think about having to work for someone and then them telling you how to color your picture, especially in the lines and what colors to use and things like that. So I love that. I love your story, Regina, and I love how you started off on a farm, which we talk a lot about on this podcast. Ironically, with a lot of people start off in some sort of family venture or farming or in fine dining and culinary background, obviously because of food, but also there seems to be this thing that the entrepreneurs we have on this show is one, the willingness to start something and not afraid to fail, and knowing that if they don't do it, then they've never taken the chance, and that is a failure. Failure is actually never starting also. And you mentioned that as well, so I think that's hugely important. The other thing is, as you said, coloring outside the lines, where we get to live and determine our own destiny, and while it's hard, we do get to make an impact, and we do change people's lives, whether it's through food, and food does bring people together, and people give food and give products, and just the friendships we gain around food as entrepreneurs also I think is important, because you mentioned that as well, having a group of people that you can talk to and send your product to and test, and having those people in your life and you being a part of their life and giving them a chance for their voice to be heard, and the products that you are demonstrating or trying to develop and using their feedback, it makes people feel important and cared for and loved for sure. So I love all of those things. So as we keep going forward, Deborah had mentioned your labels on your bottles and your logo and the presentation. So this is my last question, which is how did you go about designing all those, and where did the ideas come for the logo and the labels on those bottles? Because I agree with Deborah, they're so well done. We always like to hear how people come up with those ideas.
So the chicken obviously is something a part of my life. I mean, as a kid, I told Deborah, I know how to feed a chicken. I know how to take care of a chicken. I know how to fry a chicken. The chicken was a big deal for us. So that I knew. When I sat down with my with this advertising agency here in Dunwoody, they know my story. So the more I talked, the more nouns and adjectives got written down. And the rolling pin for me, you'll see a rolling pin. The chicken is actually standing on a rolling pin. It's my mother collected rolling pins. I collect rolling pins. And the name, well, obviously my personal name is in the brand, and that's who I am. But the farm kitchen, I would say that, to me, it talks and speaks a lot about like my background and where I grew up and my love of the kitchen and food. So that's where that all kind of played in. But the firm that I work with here in Dunwoody, it's called Crab Rattermacher, and it's in Dunwoody. And the managing partner, probably back in 2012, a long time ago, 2012, he was a big push for me, and he was a big proponent of me starting this business. And he said, if you don't do it, you're going to keep talking 20 years from now that you should have did it. So it goes all back to like surrounding yourself with great influences. And this advertising firm that works with me now, they do great things for me. And they make us look good, and they make us sound good, look good, and we're professional. And all of our promotion material and pieces come from Rick and his managing team. So I'm grateful to them for that.
And thank you for sharing that. I'll make sure I want to make sure I put that special mention to them in the notes of the podcast as well, since they've helped you so much. And just to touch upon it, I mean, I love that message, because we often talk about on the podcast that if you don't do it, it's the fear of failure, and thus we never take the first step forward. But the other part that we never talk about is what you mentioned, which is getting 20, 30 years down the road and being like, talking about how I should have done it and I never did it, and then living with that. And I think a lot of people have that, and even myself as an entrepreneur, and maybe even Deborah, I don't know, we haven't actually ever talked about it, but there is some things in my life that I wish I would have done that I never did when I was younger. And looking back and having that feeling of why didn't I do it, or why didn't I pursue it, it is a little bit of a feeling that hangs on there, and it's a little bit of a dissatisfaction that you didn't do something that you could have done and had the opportunity to do then, or in life. So, for that reason alone, I think taking the first step, it's another reason not to be fearful, because having to live with that, something eating at you just a little bit, wishing you would have done something, that's hard. And we shouldn't be hard on ourselves, don't get me wrong, but I think that you touched upon something that's important. Is it's much easier living with, we tried it and did it, and maybe we failed at it, but most likely we won't, because if we take that first step forward, then we're committed to doing it. And we've found on numerous occasions on this podcast that a lot of people do succeed once they make that step forward, if they manage their money properly and they don't try to grow too big. And as you said, make sure they pick, we always talk about 5 to 8 products, and you mentioned 7 great products. And I think that's a good rule, and it's sustainable, and you don't try to grow too fast, and you don't try to get into every market there is and burn yourself out, and you manage your family time as well, right? That everything sort of can come together, but you need to be able to be mindful of what you're doing. And all of that is much better than the feeling of never actually doing it and then living with that 20 years down the road. And so I'm glad we talked about that for sure. And it was sort of the thing, I guess, with the podcast also. Once I decided to do it, it was eating at me that I hadn't already started it. And, and I was scared because, my voice being out there, it's kind of hard to imagine. That was only 7 weeks ago that we started it, but considering we've recorded so many episodes, but at least 7 weeks ago when we're recording this episode. But the thing is that my fear was that I never wanted to look back and wish that I had done it. And I think that is an important thing. I never put words to it until you said that. And so I really want to ingrain that in the audience who's out there listening and debating whether they want to actually start their own business or be a food or beverage entrepreneur, because the feeling of going out there and doing it, and obviously you want to take the right steps, and as you did, make sure you have a little bit of training in whatever it is you're about to do. We talk about that too, and how you went to culinary school to get that training and then went out and got some work experience before you actually started. So you learned, as you said, and mentioned that if you're stagnant, you're not growing. And so make sure that you're constantly learning and growing is an important part of the entrepreneurial process, even before you even become an entrepreneur. And so I wanted to mention that as well. And, God, I can't wait to get you back on, Regina, and hear the new flavors you develop and your next steps forward and how you're growing. So, I'd really love to have you back on the podcast in the next 8 to 10 months and tell how your journey's continued, if that's okay with you.
That would be great. Yes, I'd be interested.
So thank you again, Regina. Seriously, we really appreciate you coming on and being a part of our dream.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. I was glad we could do this. And I'm excited about sharing our products with you. So you guys will be getting a little care package in the mail, okay?
Okay, thank you very much. And the audience that's out there, if you like what you heard about Regina's products, please check her out. It's reginasfarmkitchen.com. Online, see what she's doing, order some, because I think they're worth trying. At least Deborah and I have literally drooled all over the microphones here in the studio, so we will be trying all of them. And the other part is, please share Regina's story. Please share this episode with your friends and family. We're trying to get out there and tell the story of the food entrepreneur. So those of you in the audience, please share what you have. Tell someone about what we're doing on the podcast and what she's doing and about her products, because I think they're unique in that she's really putting her heart and soul into every batch. We talked about small batches. So please, support what we're doing, support what she's doing, and really support the state of Georgia, because they're doing some great things there as well. With that being said, thank you everybody for listening in. I'm Justin Bizzarro. I'm the host. If you're interested in being on the show, please reach out to us on social media at Justin and the Food Entrepreneurs, or justin.bizzarro@gmail.com, and that's BIZZARRO@gmail.com. And everyone have a great day, and I look forward to doing another podcast with you, Regina, and everyone have a great day, and so long for now.